We have a shocking Filip Chytil injury update, as it does not look good for one of the New York Rangers' best players so far this season. And we're also going to break down a major report which has the New York Rangers making an in-season trade for another defenseman. We're going to break it all down on this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 70% of you who watch our videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to do yourself a favor, it's free. Hit that subscribe button and you get to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. And that's right, you did not mishear me. We're going to get into Filip Chytil's injury in just a second, as well as a big trade update or potential trade or what have you. There are some rumors flying around about the Rangers and Chris Drury being interested in a defenseman of all positions. Very, very interesting for the Rangers. But we're going to get into Filip Chytil first. Obviously, the other night runs into or collides with, whatever way you want to phrase it, K'Andre Miller. And K'Andre Miller has been getting a lot of flack right now from Rangers fans because his play hasn't been great. It hasn't been good. He has to be better, and he goes out, and unfortunately, he didn't purposefully mean to injure Filip Chytil, but the fact of the matter is that he did hit him, and Filip Chytil is injured. And we know Filip Chytil's injury history, his history of concussions. He was obviously held out for majority of last season, almost the entire season, and eventually came back in the playoffs, but wasn't able to really get back into the lineup steadily. But this is from Phil, and the priority is Filip Chytil's health, his well-being. But if he's down for a substantial amount of time, I assume that meant time, which he certainly could be, this is devastating for the New York Rangers. He's been one of their best players. He's centered their best line, and that was, of course, Larry Brooksy in one of his latest podcasts, and of course he's been writing about it as well. But he is right about one thing, this is for sure, and we don't know exactly the timeline of Filip Chytil, but we have a little bit of insight, which I'll get into in a second, about how long he might be out. But one thing Brooksy is correct about is the fact that he is, first of all, a center, and he's been centering the Rangers' best line, which is their third line. It has been their best line so far this season, and he has been, honestly, he's probably been their best player, their most consistent player, their most solidified player, whatever you want to say in the lineup. He has been their best player. And let's get into his stats as well. This is a player, still relatively young. You still want to say maybe he's learning the league, right? But no, I think he's figured it out. And in very limited minutes so far this season, he has 9 points in 15 games. And, he's playing on the third line. He doesn't get too many special team opportunities. He's playing a lot 5-on-5, but he's been one of the best. He's been centering one of the best lines in hockey at 5-on-5, not just on the Rangers, which they are the best line on the New York Rangers. One of the best 5-on-5 lines in the entire league. He has been fantastic so far this season. I've been seeing the comments. I'm not giving his flowers. I'm not giving him his flowers so far this season. I should be making a bigger deal about him being their best player. I've noticed it. I just haven't talked about it because it hasn't been an issue. He's just quietly doing his thing on that line. Capo Caco's been great as well. And of course, Will Cooley. I've talked about him a lot on the channel. Love his speed. Love what he brings. Everything he brings, he's been doing a great job this season. So he's been one of their best players as well, with Filip Chytil. Just fantastic. That line has been great, and obviously we just took a look at his stats. He's been putting up decent numbers, and he's not Artemi Panarin or anything like that, but at the same time, keep in mind, doesn't really get special teams opportunities, plays on the third line as well. So take that with a grain of salt as well. But we'll get into this. This is from Johnny, and this is in response to the New York Rangers PR tweeting out that Jake Leschyshyn has been called up from the Hartford Wolfpack. So another player gets called up, taking a roster spot. It's not Matt Rempe. This has to make you believe that, he might not get into any games, but maybe they're calling him up to get that experience, to travel with the team, stuff like that. Maybe he gets into a game, right, Leschyshyn? But this tells me that Chytil might not play on this entire road trip. He might not even travel with the team, and they're going to be back in 4 games. This is a pretty substantial road trip. It's not just a one-off game or anything like that. He's going to miss some time here. So the New York Rangers head to Seattle today to kick off a 4-game road trip, which they play tonight at the time of this video coming out tonight against the Seattle Kraken. Still no word on Filip Chytil, but with this call-up, I'd assume he's not making the trip, and I think all Rangers fans can put 1 and 1 together here. And it's equaling that he will probably be out for a while. And this is from Vince Mercogliano as well. Not a great sign for Filip Chytil's status, that call-up is, and it really isn't. And Vince Mercogliano had a great article on Filip Chytil's injury as well, and gave some really interesting insight into everything, and we'll get into it in a second. But here's the latest on Hedo's injury and what it means for the New York Rangers with fallout for the immediate future and how it might affect the lineup. And this is what Peter Laviolette had to say about treating him like any other injured player, because obviously he has an injury history, and not just injury history, a history of concussions, which is a very serious thing. And you don't want any of the post-concussion syndrome symptoms to come back up or anything like that. And there's other players who've dealt with that in the past, like Sidney Crosby. You don't want situations like that. You want to make sure he's good. So he said, we're always careful with our players. Nobody jumps back on without the doctors and everybody doing their job and obviously their due diligence. And a lot of people were making a lot out of that maybe it wasn't a concussion the other night because he did come back out and then, leave again. So obviously they would have ruled something out, but you never really know with these things. So, it's a good thing to take precaution, I think, especially with a guy who has a history of some of these injuries, but we don't even know. It might not be. We don't exactly know. It's an upper body injury. We might have an idea. We can speculate based on history, but we will find out soon. Hopefully he's not out for a long time because, again, he's been one of their best players. So hopefully, and like the article says, he came out to play a little bit more as well. And just to further how good he's been so far this season, he's been registering an impressive 63%, a little bit more than 63% expected goals when he's out there. So he's been fantastic. And making him the only player on the Rangers with an above 60%. Crazy. Insane so far this season. That's according to Natural Stat Trick. And he's been one of the Rangers' most willing shooters, tying Artemi Panarin for the team lead with 32 shots on goal at 5-on-5, specifically at 5-on-5, because we can't really talk about special teams. It's unfair with Panarin. But 5-on-5. He's been impressive. He's been fantastic. He goes in there and he gives us good minutes. He's fast. He's competitive. And I think that's a spot. A spot is usually a good fit for him. He's played there before. He's done that. I think he's real comfortable there, and he's providing them very good minutes for the New York Rangers. And that, of course, was from Peter Laviolette himself. And one last thing I wanted to touch on, and let me know in the comments what you think about Filipino. I think that, precaution is a good thing with this player. Maybe let him sit out for 4 games if he isn't feeling right, if it is concussion symptoms based on that hit. Unfortunately, that's just something you got to watch out for with this player. He's a very skilled player, but the physical play, it's something, maybe he won't be able to do, but hopefully he's back speedy, and hopefully it's not even a concussion. Hopefully it's something else. But obviously you never like to see a player hurt. Now, this is from Vince Mercogliano as well in the same article. This is what I thought was interesting, that the Rangers might be looking to make a trade. There's growing belief that the Rangers will be in the market for a top 4 defenseman, but in order to fit that along with a center, they may have to trim some salary. Jacob Trouba's name could come up in the rumor mill after that possibility was explored during the offseason, but trading the captain is a complicated move that is more plausible next summer, which we talked about. Jacob Trouba probably not going to be a New York Ranger next year, probably going to get traded, but not in season this year, probably next summer. An easier deal would include Ryan Lindgren, who is playing on a 1-year, $4.5 million contract and has a murky future in New York. It would be a pure rental for another team, but a lot of teams are interested in rentals and would be interested in a player like this. So let me know in the comments what you think. We're going to dive into this in another video in more detail. But what do you think about Ryan Lindgren possibly being moved off of, and maybe a guy like Mancini comes back into the lineup? Yes, he's young, but he's been playing great, right? So a little bit inexperienced, but maybe you make room for somebody else, and maybe you make a move up front, or even add another top 4 guy. Mancini would come in maybe on the bottom, and you keep Zach Jones there in rotation, something like that. So I think that would be something fun to explore. But let me know in the comments what you think of Filip Chytil. Hopefully he's back in the lineup soon. And let me know what you think about the Rangers trading for potentially a top 4 defenseman in return for Ryan Lindgren. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.